Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Andrea and I have a really interesting topic for you all today. So I've never thought of myself as a self-centered individual, but recently someone pointed out to me that, hey, you're kind of self-centered. And I remember thinking to myself, what? I'm not self-centered. Being self-centered isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there tends to be a lot of negative associations with it. And it just kind of stayed in my head, and I wanted to talk today a little about it. Being self-centered isn't entirely bad, but it can be harming your relationships with other people. You would think that by focusing on yourself, you would be happier, but being self-centered can actually lead you to being more unhappy. And the more I thought about it, I was just like, I really want to talk about this because I feel like a lot of us aren't aware that we're pretty self-centered. And I was just thinking recently, and I feel like people have done so much for me, but I haven't really done enough for others. Like, I have done things for others, but not significant things that actually require me taking time out of my day or me going out of my way to do something for them. And for instance, I feel like giving money to someone doesn't take a lot of effort, especially if you have money. But making time out of your day to actually go help someone out with somebody is a whole different thing than doing something that requires little effort, if that makes sense. But I was just thinking about that recently, and here I am thinking like I'm such a great person, but there's only a few instances where I can recall that I've done something for someone. And I guess not doing things doesn't necessarily mean you're self-centered, but I think it is one of the signs. We definitely live in a society where you're encouraged to be self-centered and be kind of selfish. What I hear very often is people feeling like they're better than other people. And I think that's like the number one sign that you're self-centered. I hear people all the time say things like, I'm better than that person, and I'm guilty of that too. And I honestly just don't think it comes from a good place. Being better than someone, I don't think is something that even exists. We're all equal, and I think a lot of us need to work on seeing each other as equal. And a lot of us tend to associate being better than others by maybe because you have a better job than a person, or maybe because you go to a better school, or you have more money, when really none of that stuff actually matters. Because when you think about it, all humans are inherently flawed. Like, every single human on this planet is flawed. No one is perfect. So for you to think that you're better than someone, it's just a lie. It's false. Another sign that you might potentially be self-centered is feeling like people are not worth your time. And now, I'm not saying that you need to dedicate all your free time to people, but I feel like a lot of us just don't feel like anyone is worth our time anymore, besides maybe our close friend or our partner. We just kind of dismiss everyone because we feel like everything that's going on in our lives is more important than everyone else. And that's just not the truth. I feel like this affects the way we approach a lot of things in our life. For instance, I think of myself when I have to attend presentations, and a lot of times I have thoughts going through my head like, oh, this isn't worth my time. And I forget that I'm not the only one there. The presenter isn't just for me, but they're there to present to an entire audience. And just feeling like, oh, this isn't worth my time. Well, not everyone wants to be there either. Like, you're not special, and like, the presenter isn't just there for you, it's for everyone, and you're just focusing on yourself. It's so funny to me because a lot of us, we love to be heard, we want to be understood, and when we're speaking, we want all eyes on us. But the second we have to give our attention to someone else, it just feels like, oh, this isn't worth my time. But why is it worth time when you're the one speaking? And that's something that I have, and that's something I had to become aware of myself. That, hey, it's not good to think that way. And I also just think that that statement of like, oh, they're not worth my time, makes it kind of sound like your time is the most valuable thing on earth. When, yeah, your time is valuable, but everyone's time is valuable, not just yours. There's just so many signs that a person can be self-centered. And another one I was thinking about is just not listening to others or being a good listener. Now, I know a lot of us have short attention spans. That's definitely me with my ADHD. But sometimes I think we have a hard time participating I think we have a hard time being present in conversations. And I don't even think it's because of the short attention span. I think it's simply because we're kind of self-centered. We want to be heard, but when it comes to someone else speaking, it's just not as interesting to us. I feel like a lot of us kind of dismiss how fun it is talking to people and seeing what they have to say. Like everyone in the world has a different perspective on things, and no one person is the same, right? And hearing a person speak, I think, is actually really awesome. And paying attention to what they have to say, their thoughts, you can learn so much from them. And for some reason, I feel like a lot of us feel like only what we think, our thoughts and our beliefs are the most important. But if we actually made the time to listen to others, we would see how beneficial it really is. And also, it just makes you a better friend, a better partner, or family member. So what explains people being self-centered? I thought this would have an easy answer, but I think there's so many different answers for this. Something common I've noticed among self-centered people is that they're an only child. For instance, I have siblings, but we have major age gaps between us. So in a lot of ways, I grew up like an only child, and I had access to my parents' attention basically 24/7. I was always heard. And because I had this undivided attention, I felt like the center of the universe. But as a kid, you don't even realize that's even happening. But now that I'm older, I've realized I tend to focus on myself very heavily. And I noticed that people who grew up with siblings, they're much more comfortable sharing things, like they're less selfish. And usually they have better listening skills and more empathy for other people. But what's cool about being an adult is that you can change that. So if you grew up being self-centered, you're an only child, you're in control of changing that. Honestly, I think it's pretty interesting to look at where our characteristics come from and just how our personalities are and why we act the way we do, because a lot of it does have to do with your childhood. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised to find out that being self-centered is a consequence of just having good parents. I've also noticed that a lot of people who are self-centered tend to be insecure. I've worked on my insecurities and I'm a little less insecure than I used to be in the past, but I think it's definitely correlated with being self-centered because you're so worried or just concerned with what the people around you think about you. But the reality is no one actually cares about you. And it's really funny because you're insecure, you're so worried about what people think about you. But at the same time, it's making you be really self-centered because you're so worried with the thoughts others might have about you, but the reality is no one cares about you. Like, why do you think you're so important? And that's where it kind of connects with being self-centered, is feeling like everyone's super worried about you. The minute you go in a room, everyone's eyes are on you. And that's not the truth. So yeah. That's just something to think about. I also think society has heavily influenced us to be self-centered. I can count the million times that I've seen, focus on yourself, focus on yourself. And I get that the bigger message is good, focus on yourself in terms of like cutting off toxic things and trying to be your best self, right? But I think in a lot of ways, it's made us just like, it's made us really selfish because when you're too focused on yourself, you stop caring about other people. And we're not made in this life to be alone. Like, we're made to have relationships with people, and you can't do that if you're just focused on yourself. And as I get older, I realize more and more that giving to others is what actually makes you happy. Don't get me wrong, I love receiving things, but giving to others is ultimately, I would argue, what brings people fulfillment. Okay, so now let's talk about the ways we can try to be less self-centered. These are things I'm also working on myself, and I hope some of you will try them. So the first one is, I kind of hinted at this earlier, is listening to others. And I keep repeating this because I think it's super important. And this is something everyone can work in. And also it's something that I would argue doesn't take a lot of effort. One way you can do this is by being present in a conversation, which means trying your best not to be distracted by the things around you when you're talking to a person, and maybe asking them questions regarding the topic you guys are talking about. And, sometimes these questions don't come naturally, so sometimes you gotta fake, ask the questions, but I promise you, over time, it will come naturally. But just like everything, it's gonna take some practice. And I promise you, being present in a conversation with somebody makes the conversation 10 times better. And, it's fun to talk about yourself. There's no denying that. We all love it. But it's actually super, super interesting to hear what people have to say. And the more you learn to like it, it's just gonna come more natural to you, and you're not gonna be as focused on yourself. So then when your turn does come, it's gonna be great too, but like you also already heard the other person and you're not feeling like you're stealing all the attention all the time. Another big thing to be less self-centered is doing things for other people or giving to other people. And, everyone gives in different ways, whether that be their time, their money, their attention, whatever it is. Just giving to others will make you a better person and just less selfish. And I used to think I feel like favors, I used to be a person who hated doing favors for other people because I'm just like, I'm super busy. I don't have time to be doing things for people, especially when it comes to like my parents, when they ask me like a teeny favor and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. It's too much. Sometimes the favors we get asked can be a lot, but I promise you, doing favors for other people will make you feel better in the end. Like anytime I've done something for someone, I always just feel much better as a person. I hear people say time and time again, like, I love helping people, but are you really helping people? Because I don't feel like we all do it enough. Another tip is to learn to care about others. We know things because we learn them. So it's okay to learn to care about others. If you're not naturally a caring person, you can definitely become one. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the most caring person in the world, because I know a lot of people are mean and they suck and like, why should you care about them, right? But there's also a lot of people that are worth caring for. And this goes beyond your family sometimes. The more you care about other people and actually take the time to understand them and just be there for them, the more you realize you're actually really similar, and you also see that all humans have flaws. And I feel like a lot of us feel like we're so different from each other, but in a lot of ways we're actually really similar, and that helps kind of bridge that gap between people where you feel like, I'm so much better than them, or I'm different and stuff like that, where you're just so focused on yourself. If you actually take the time to get to know people and care about them, you realize, hey, we're actually really similar, or I really like their way of thinking. And also, one big one is apologizing to people. So a lot of people who are self-centered also tend to feel like they're never wrong. I know that's definitely me. I have a hard time accepting mistakes or just feeling like I'm wrong, because I just feel like everything I think is right. The more you practice apologizing to people, the better person you become. And I think a lot of us apologize in the wrong way though, because we'll say, oh, I'm sorry you felt this way, or I'm sorry I did this. It's because, but I think a lot of us don't know how to apologize correctly. And this is something I've been working on too. It's just apologizing truthfully and like not dismissing whatever you did to that person. Because I've been told sometimes like, hey, I'm sorry you felt this way about this. But if you're saying that, you're not actually apologizing. You're basically kind of still justifying your actions, but then you're putting the word I'm sorry in front of it. So then you're able to say, well, I still apologize. I think a lot of us need to realize that you don't lose anything apologizing to people. It doesn't make you a weaker person or less of a person to apologize. It's important to accept when we're wrong and just actually acknowledge it and mean it. When we actually apologize intentionally, there's just a different feeling that comes with that. From my personal experience, I feel like people who are self-centered tend to be very anxious. I'm a person who suffers from a lot of anxiety all the time. And I think part of my anxiety also comes from just being a little self-centered, because you're always so focused on yourself, you're always so worried. And I think this happens because you're always so occupied with yourself and your own thoughts. You're not caring about anyone else, you're not interested in anyone else's life. So of course you're going to be super anxious because you're just worried about yourself and all your problems, instead of actually like leaving yourself for one moment and actually getting to know someone and getting to know their life. Society more and more just keeps encouraging people to be self-centered, and I see it in so many ways. Everyone's always talking down on other people, and it's just so sad, honestly, because it makes, because who are these, because really, who are these other people? These other people can be your neighbor, these other people can be people you go to school with, your colleagues, and the reality is they're just as amazing as you are. And okay, maybe that doesn't go for everyone. There are some terrible people out there, but I guess my overall message is that we shouldn't be looking down on other people or feel superior to others. And you know, fight me on this, but I really do think people who are self-centered just tend to feel better than others. And I can say that from my experience because I didn't see it as a super bad thing. I know in the back of my head, I was just trying to advance in life. I had a lot of insecurities, and I feel like being self-centered was one of the ways I was kind of dealing with my insecurities. And when you don't take the time to care about the world around you and the people around you, you're not going to be happy. Life, I just don't think life works that way. You're supposed to care about other people. I think that's the whole reason we have a voice, is to listen to others and for us to speak also. But when you make your life entirely about yourself, things get boring and people aren't going to like you. So because why is somebody going to want to speak to you if you're never interested in what they have to say or you never care about them? And in a lot of ways, we want people to be there for us, but we don't want to be there. And we feel like we're special, like they should want to hear me, but the truth is you're just like everyone else. And I keep saying this, but like we live in a society where everyone's becoming really divided and just so focused on themselves, and nobody wants to give. Everybody's like tired or exhausted of giving, and I don't think a lot of us are giving in the first place. Like we're so greedy with our time, which is understandable for certain people, depending on your circumstances in life. But I know a lot of us do have some space to give more, and it can be little things such as your attention, for instance, or making the time to call somebody who needs you. And for a lot of us, I think being self-centered isn't something we want it to be. It's just the way we were kind of raised, and that's just the person we became to be. But as I mentioned earlier, like when you're an adult, you're now in charge of your life. And I feel like you can't always justify the way you are with your childhood. Like, yes, it explains the way you are, but you also can't use it as an excuse to be mean or to be self-centered. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.